He should be at the end of the rainbow. Oh, come on!
This St. Patrick's Day, you can find me gold on select boxes of cereal. They're magically delicious.
Okay, fellas, story time. The reason that the intro is Lucky Charms themed is because this video was originally supposed to be coming out on St. Patrick's Day, but I spent way too long editing the intro, and so I was going to post it the next day, and then I realized I did a bunch of math wrong on some of the items in the build, and so I had to totally reorganize the last half of the build, but nonetheless, here we are, a little bit past when I wanted to get the video out, but it is here. So, without further ado, let's get into it and enjoy. Welcome back, class. Before we get really diving into the build here, I want to go over my build philosophy, and it will kind of help you to understand why the build is put together how it is. And to do this, we're going to talk about what I'm calling the holy trinity of drain tanking. Now, for those of you familiar with MMOs or hero shooters, you've probably heard of a holy trinity before. And this is a concept where you have a healer class, a tank class, and a DPS class. And all of these classes kind of complement each other, but no class can do everything. And that is where the drain tank comes in, because drain tanks can do everything. They hate teamwork. If you're a Victor player, you don't want to play with your team. You just want to carry the game all by yourself 1v12. And I am being a little hyperbolic there. You obviously want to play with your team. But the concept of the drain tank is that it can complete the holy trinity all by itself. And so we're going to adapt this a little bit to our own purposes. Obviously, we're not an actual healer, we're just healing ourselves. So we're going to change healer to sustain, and then DPS is DPS, it's always the same, and a tank becomes your health efficiency multiplier. And a health efficiency multiplier is something like resistances or healing booster that basically makes it so that for every 1 health point that you recover from your sustain, that health point gets multiplied by, say, 50%. So now each health point is worth 2 effective HP. If you don't know what effective HP is, go watch my last video. I covered that. So each 3 of these categories is kind of what you want to focus your economy on, and what you're spending your souls on, and what items you buy should have one of these 3 or 2 of these 3 categories. And the way that they kind of play off each other is sustain is obviously good, but if you don't do any damage first, then your sustain is useless because you're not doing any damage. So a lifesteal, for example, you have to do damage in order to get the damage back as sustain. So you don't really want to buy sustain without buying damage. So the damage amplifies the sustain. And then once you have those 2, then you can start thinking about resistances, because resistances multiply your health efficiency. So for every 1 health point that you're sustaining, it becomes 2 health points. And so your health efficiency multiplier increases your sustain. And when you do that, then you're surviving for longer, so that means you can do more damage. So all 3 of these things kind of work synergistically together to make your build really, really strong. Now, if we kind of draw a little example graph here of the different categories and like when you should be buying what, as I mentioned earlier, you don't want to just start off buying like Infuser as your first big purchase, because you're not really doing a lot of damage at this point, and so Infuser isn't going to be stealing a lot of health. Instead, you want to buy a little purchase of damage, and then a little purchase of lifesteal, and then a little purchase of resistances. And this way, you kind of build up slowly. You can kind of think about it as like 3 legs of a table, right? Obviously, you don't build a table like step by step, but let's say that you did. Let's say it's like made out of Jenga blocks or something. So you want to put 1 block into each category as you build it, because your dinner is on the top of the table. And if you build 1 leg super tall, then your dinner is going to fall onto the floor and you don't get to eat. And that would be a big bummer. So that is the holy trinity of drain tanking. Hopefully that makes sense. And now we will get onto the actual build. Okay, this is the build in its current state. I am very happy with how it turned out because I've put a lot of time into this build, and I think that it is probably the strongest build that I have ever used on Victor, at least in this patch, because when he came out, he was an absolute menace. It didn't really matter what you built. But in this patch, this, to me, has felt like the strongest build, and I have tested a lot of different things. So I'm going to kind of break down the build and explain why I buy certain items. But first, we're just going to teach you guys how to use the build and like how to use these categories. But before we even do that, I want to talk about my point allocation because it is a little unorthodox and some people will probably disagree with me on this, but I think it's important to talk about. So first 2 points into jumpstart. Also, always unlock pain battery first in lane, unless you're like, well, no, I can't really think of any reason you wouldn't do this, because you can use it right away now, which is a really nice buff, but also then as you're trading in that first stage of the game, you get to recharge it and get a second one free before you unlock any of your other skills. Jumpstart, while you're at full HP, which you will be because if it were the first skill that you unlocked, doesn't really do much because it's current health. So unless you get like super low right away, Jumpstart isn't going to do anything for you. So always unlock Pain Battery first. I think most people would agree with that. Then I put 2 points into Jumpstart for the extra regen and the increased cooldown now because it significantly improves your sustain in your lane. Extra damage and slow on Pain Battery is nice, but it doesn't do that much for your laning. So that's why I do 2 points into Jumpstart. Now comes the controversial part, where I put 1 point into my Shocking Reanimation because a 15% fire rate increase and a 6% bullet damage per bullet is quite substantial, especially on early game Victor. It makes your lane pressure a lot more and it makes you farm a lot faster. And it gives you a reason to actually use your ult. I know a lot of people, myself included, if they didn't put this point into his ult, then they would just hold on to the ult and be like, well, it's a second life bar. I don't want to just waste it. I need to keep it in case I need to use it in a pinch to survive, which is not really the optimal way to play his early game. So I like to put 1 point into ult because then it gets me to actually use my ult offensively, and then I have this huge buff to my gun for the next however long, like 3 minutes. And yeah, it just feels really good. Plus, it's 1 point. It delays your spikes a little bit later on, which we'll talk about. But it's only 1 point. It's like the difference of getting your maxed aura at like 33,600 souls versus 35,600 souls. It's not that big of a deal. Plus, this makes you farm so much faster, you'll be hitting those soul numbers sooner. So I think it's a really good return on your investment for 1 skill point. The next controversial thing that I do is I almost always max my jumpstart before I put any points into Pain Battery. Because let's see where we're at right here. We already have 2 levels unlocked in jumpstart. So for 5 more points, we can get to the max level. Whereas for Pain Battery, you need 8 points to get to max level. The max level Pain Battery is really good, but you're taking longer to get there. And you'll notice that in this build, I no longer go extra charge in my lane. And that is because I maxed my jumpstart first, which gives me the extra charge, so you don't really need the extra charge item anymore. It also significantly improves your healing, and it makes you, it gives you a cleanse, which is really nice if you're laning against like a Haze, or an Infernus, or anybody who buys toxic bullets. Those are all super nice. So I just think that Jumpstart is better to level than Pain Battery. Another thing is that Pain Battery, the max level is really good for PvP. It doesn't do anything for you when you're farming. So that if you're going to be playing passively, which you kind of should be, not just like AFK farming, but you shouldn't really be trying to force team fights until you get to a little bit later in the game. And with that in mind, Jumpstart gives you a nice heal, it makes you move faster, and it gives you an extra one in the bank. So the way that I use this is while I'm farming the jungle, as soon as I finish a camp, I'm low HP, I'll pop a Jumpstart. It makes my health go up, it makes me move faster to the next camp, and I'm a happy camper. Pain Battery doesn't do anything for farming, so it's kind of useless unless you're actively trying to look for PvP, which you shouldn't be doing. So with that philosophy in mind, that is why I max Jumpstart before Pain Battery. And then after that, I think it's pretty typical of what most people do. Max Jumpstart, max Aura, and then max Ult. So now I want to go over kind of how this build works. The first, and it's kind of broken up by rows. So this row is significant, this row is significant, this row is significant, this row is just kind of like extra options. The first row is the laning row. And if you want to keep it simple and not use your brain, you can auto queue the build and just buy it left to right, because this in general is the most efficient way to buy these items. And you'll notice that once you buy this entire row, you have all of your 4.8k spikes, which gives you a significant power advantage. And at this point in the game, you can take a lot of 1v1s. You're still not like a 1v12 whatever raid boss, but you can do decently for yourself, and you farm really fast too. So this is a good power spike to know. At this point, we can look at the second row. The reason that I put the second row after the first row is because I want you to take a look at these items. And this is all tank items and like anti-CC, anti-heal kind of counter items. So you should look at your enemies at this point. Are they doing more spirit damage or are they doing more bullet damage? And you should buy at least one of these items. So let's say they have a lot of spirit damage on their team, you buy spirit resilience. And then you can move down to the next part of the build. But an important thing to note about this second row is that you should keep coming back to it. And a good rule of thumb is, if you die, take a look at this row and buy an item out of it. If you just died to a haze in the side lane who did a bunch of bullet damage to you, buy bullet resilience. And that's kind of how you can think about this row, is every time you die, buy another item from it. If you don't die at all, then you don't really need to buy that many items from it because you're doing fine without them. So, after that, you move down to the mid game, and you'll notice that all 4 of these items are upgrades from the original set of items that you purchased, and that means that you cannot get slot locked with this build, which is really, really nice, especially if your team is struggling. And if you do somehow get slot locked, and after you've bought all 4 of these items, there's another slot locked option over here for items that are not as necessary to buy, but they're still good, they still improve the build in some way, so you're not just sitting on a bunch of souls. So for this section, I'm not really going to get into the specific items right now. We'll go back at the end and go over each item, but I'm just going to kind of show you the flow of the game. I usually buy these and throw in some resiliences. Once you've bought all 4 of these, you are pretty strong. 33,600 souls is significant because if you skip putting the 1 point into your ult, that's kind of personal preference. I like to do it, but you don't have to. If you skip that point, then at 33,600 souls, you unlock max level aura. And that is significant because it gives you 15% extra damage for everything, but it makes the equation a lot more balanced in your favor when you're trading with your aura and lifesteal. Because before you get to level 5 aura, I think it's once you buy Spirit Rend, you become like net neutral, assuming that you're in a 1v1 and they don't have any spirit resilience or spirit resistance, and they don't have any like damage cut on you, they don't have any heal cut on you. If they don't have any of that, at this point in the build, you become damage neutral, which means that if you're 1v1ing somebody and they're just standing in your aura is healing you for the amount that it's damaging you. But once you get to level 5, once you get to max level Aura of Suffering, that equation tilts in your favor, so now it's actually healing you. And this is all in a 1v1. if you're in a 2v1 and you have 2 people in your aura, then it's like healing you no matter what. If you do put the 1 point into your ult beforehand, then you need 2,000 more souls after this point to unlock your max level aura. But I think I mentioned this earlier, I find that if you put the 1 point in your ult, you're farming souls at a much faster pace anyway, so you'll be at that point. And also, this is assuming that you bought both resiliences, right? If you didn't buy these, you should at least buy one, but if you didn't, then you're not going to reach that threshold at this point, which is just an important thing to know. At this point in the build, I would highly recommend buying, based on what you're facing, but let's just assume that it is a even composition of Spirit and Bullet. I would highly recommend buying these 2 items. I think these are the best items that you can buy on Victor after resiliences. Juggernaut is nice because you're building into it anyway, so it's not taking up an extra slot. There are situations where it's not nice, but I'll get into that when I go over each item individually. Frenzy gives you a lot of spirit resistance, but we'll also get into that later. So at this point, I would say you're really strong. I would say you can take most team fights and be good to go. You have a lot of sustain, you have a lot of damage, and you have a lot of resistances. So all 3 of the pillars are kind of at a good level. And so now you can choose how you want to pivot the build. And the way I kind of think about this is, are you dying too much and does your team not have a front line? Then you need to go more tanky. And to do that, for example, you could buy more items out of this row. And then also Siphon Bullets is just really busted right now. We'll get into that later. But that is really good for if you're going like full tank, because it lets you do damage anyway, and it gives you health. If you don't need to survive more, if you're already surviving good, you can choose to either pivot to gun or to spirit. And I would say gun is probably better if you don't have any hyper carries on your team or like any M1 characters. You can pivot to gun and start building like Mercurial Magnum. Spiritual Overflow is kind of more of a hybrid, but also good. And yeah, if you buy these items with the rest of the build, you'll just like melt objectives, you'll melt people, you'll do good. But let's say that you have like a Wraith on your team, so you don't need the gun damage. Then you can consider pivoting to Spirit. And I think Spirit is the most powerful team fighting choice. But this assumes that the enemy doesn't build any heal reduction, because that significantly nerfs your lifesteal. And it assumes that you're actually able to catch them and have them stand in your aura. So like if you're going into Abrams, Billy, Shiv, Yamato, these are the types of characters that like to be in your face. And if they're in your face, you can hit them with your aura very easily. So I would highly recommend going into Spirit. But if you're against like a Mina, Holiday, you get the idea, that can just jump away and you can't really lock them down, it's not really worth it to invest more into your aura, because you're not going to be getting the max value out of your souls. Now that that is out of the way, I am going to go through some of the changes I made from my last video that you've probably noticed. Some of the item changes, and just break down each item, when I would buy it, and why. So the first big change is Cultist Sacrifice, and shout out to Zerial on this one. If you don't know Zerial, he is a very good Victor player. I would highly recommend checking out his channel. I'll link that in the description. But he got me on the bandwagon of Cultist Sacrifice as an early buy, and I've always been pretty skeptical about this item, because I think like the buffs are okay on Victor. I don't think they're great on Victor. And the damage versus NPCs is good for farming and pushing waves, but it's only 5% more than monster rounds. So typically I would just buy monster rounds and then skip this item. But the reason that I like it now is for mainly 2 big reasons. The first is that Victor is very a lot of his power comes from his level 5 abilities. So you want to get as many souls as possible to get to these level 5 abilities. And Cultist helps you do that by giving you 150% bonus souls and letting you farm faster. So I think it's really solid for that reason. Lets you get your ability spikes sooner. And then the second reason is a little bit more obscure, but at 8 minutes, the tier 3 camp spawn. And there's 2 camps in between the lanes that each have 1 tier 3 creep each. And if I'm in a lane, will usually try and go for this at 8 minutes. Once I get there, I'm like, well, I'm already halfway to the next lane. Maybe I should just go gank them, and they won't expect it because it's a Victor. Like, Victor doesn't gank people, right? So I'll rotate over from that camp, and I swear, like, every time I do this, I get either a kill or we take the Guardian. And yeah, if the enemy team in my lane is on top of it, then they can push really fast and maybe take my Guardian. But trading a Guardian for a Guardian is not bad on Victor, because Victor likes to solo lane, and if the Guardians are still up, your teammates are probably not going to want you to solo lane. They're going to want to stay there and help you guard the Guardian. If the Guardian goes down, then you can just play under Walker, you can farm the jungle, and you can get that solo farm, which is really good on Victor. So that is why I like Cultist Sacrifice. The next big change that I want to talk about is Spirit Shredder bullets, and holy moly, everybody is sleeping on this item so hard. Like, this is the item where I think after buying this item, it feels like the nerfs just got reverted. Like, it feels like playing old Victor again. And if you go and look in the build browser, none of these top builds, except for Raw Dogger, which makes sense because he's like the #1 Victor player in NA right now, he includes it in an optional section. But I would say that this is a mandatory buy. None of these other builds even like have it in the build. But I think that will change as soon as people start to realize how OP this item is on Victor. If we think back to the Holy Trinity of drain tanking, this does 2 things. It gives you sustain and it gives you more damage. And it's a very important type of more damage because it doesn't make you do more damage to yourself. Spirit Shred is king on Victor because building Spirit is nice, but it also increases his self-damage. This only increases his damage to other people. And after buying this item, you farm significantly faster. You can take a lot more 1v1s. It's just really good. Plus, you combine that with Mystic Vulnerability, you're getting 16% Spirit Shred, which is very significant, and you definitely notice it as you're doing things throughout the map. Highly, highly recommend this item. I would say this is a core item to Victor's early game, and it makes him feel like he actually has an early game and that he doesn't have to just AFK farm for half the game until he becomes a god. Moving on from that, we have Mystic Vulnerability. This, I think most people would agree, is a really good item on Victor. It gives 2 of those pillars like I talked about. It gives your health efficiency multiplier by the Spirit Resist, and it gives you extra damage from Spirit Resist Shred, which we just talked about. Super solid item. Spirit Lifesteal, again, same thing. It gives you the sustain from the lifesteal. It gives you bonus health, which I don't think is as good on Victor, but it's still solid. Like, it still makes you more tanky. Definitely not bad. And Spirit Power, which gives you damage. Super solid item. Healing Booster just makes everything better. A core item in almost every build because Victor does so much healing. Don't really need to talk about that. Enduring Speed, not necessarily core, but I like it because it builds into Juggernaut, which I buy most games against gun carries. You don't really need the speed. Well, the speed is nice, but if you have really good movement, side note, I do not have really good movements, which is why I like this item. But if you do have really good movement, you can skip this item, go something like Healbane, do one of these optional counters down here. But yeah, I just like it because like movement speed is always nice, especially if you don't have like god tier movement, and it builds into Juggernaut. Compress cooldown I put on my jumpstart because I'm maxing out my jumpstart first, so I want to be able to use that as much as possible to maximize the amount of power I have. Plus, if you use more jumpstarts, you get more pain batteries anyway. I know a lot of people like to put compress cooldown on pain battery. I don't really like to do that because if you put it on jumpstart, you're doing more self-damage, which charges up your pain battery faster. And it's really only noticeable in lane that you get more pain batteries. but you do notice it because you can just cycle Jumpstart off of cooldown and charge up your pain batteries for free. So that's why I like to do that. And then once you buy Improved Spirit, you're at your 4.8k spike. You're good to go. Moving on to the next row. Important, I mean, a lot of this is kind of self-explanatory stuff, but important things to know about the bullet resistance items. Plated armor is only good into teams that apply a lot of debuffs to you or a lot of on-hit stuff to you. Like, if the team is very raw gun damage heavy or very melee heavy, bullet resilience is better than plated armor for half the cost. So only get this item into heavy debuff, or not debuff, but like on-hit damage. And I've decided, I was originally going to talk about the resiliences, but I think that there's such good items right now that I'm going to make a separate video just talking about those and digging into the math behind them and why I think that in most cases every character should buy these items, but they're especially good on Victor because he thrives at low HP, and these items give you more resistance the lower HP you are. So he's really benefiting from the passive most of the time with these items. And that ties into Frenzy, which has the same type of passive. It gives him a better gun, it makes him move faster, and it gives him a lot of resistances. When you stack this spirit resist with the spirit resist you get from spirit resilience, it is quite significant. I'll just show you here. We go to half health, 63%. That's over half of the damage that you're taking from spirit. And when you buy like the full build, what else? Like this and this. I think that's like most of the stuff that gives you spirit resist. You're up to 78% spirit armor, and we're gonna dive into the math on that on another video. But it like, I can't remember off the top of my head, but it makes your EHP to like 18,000 or something. It's insane how good stacking resistances is. But that is a bit of a tangent. Moving on to Witchmail, it's really, really good if you can proc it. Like, there was a game where I was just standing in Seven's ult, and I got like an extra, like my ult had just gone on cooldown, and I just stood in Seven's ult while he was ulting, and I got an extra ult out of it because it just ticked my ult cooldown all the way down to nothing. Crazy item, because Aura doesn't proc it, and Pain Battery doesn't proc it. So if your ult is already off of cooldown, it only does Jumpstart, and Jumpstarts are really good. But if your ult is on cooldown, then it'll recharge it really fast. And that's important endgame. So if you are going into like Torment Pulse or Infernus or anything that can proc this a lot, definitely buy this. This is best in slot when you can proc it. Spellbreaker, I don't buy that much, but into heavy burst damage, it's obviously good. Also into heavy silence spam. There's so many silences in the game now. In the last balance patch, they gave like a lot of characters silences on their abilities just for fun. Plus there's silence wave. There's lots of things that can silence you. And when you're silenced, you can't cleanse yourself with Jumpstart. So the debuff resist on this is really nice. Also, the debuff resist on Unstoppable is really solid. You can just buy the debuff resist item. Debuff reducer gives you that 25% debuff resist. And if you think you're going to need it more than Juggernaut, you can sub out Enduring Speed for that. I might try and squeeze that into the build somewhere here. This half of the build, like this kind of right side, kind of where everything is optional, might look a little different when you look at the build, but the concepts should be relatively similar. Another side note, Blood Tribute gives you 40% debuff resist. I haven't tested it enough to know if it's worth actually putting into the build, but I will be testing that if I come up against a lot of debuff spam. So stay tuned for that. Just if you like the build, just keep checking the store page because I might be updating it. Or you could copy it and edit it to your own heart's content and make it your own build. And moving on from that, Ethereal Shift I call the anti-bullshit item, because if their team just has a lot of lockdown on you, like Lash ult, Billy ult, stuns and knockdowns and whatever else, you can just pop this, and if they're all like dogpiling on top of you, throwing all their abilities, then it gives you a 4-second period where you can just chill. And if they've just been spamming their abilities, they'll probably miss some of their abilities. It gives you time to recover and time for your team to position better. I think it's a super solid into that type of a team fight. Unstoppable, I would buy if lots of people are cursing you. It's really good because it makes you unstoppable. Like, there's not really much to say about that. Also really good into Dynamo in the mid-boss pit. If you know that a Dynamo is going to come and try and stop everybody. Rem, like all these characters that have really good mid-boss fighting potential because of their abilities. If you get unstoppable, that just negates all of that, and then you can get the mid-boss for free. So, really good item into the right team comp. Anti-heal we talked about a little bit. This is a good substitute for enduring speed if you don't think you'll use it. But ideally for anti-heal, you want somebody else on your team to be buying it, because Victor is so slot locked that he can't really afford to save a slot for an anti-heal specific item. If nobody on your team will buy anti-heal and you have to carry them anyway, then these are your options. Spirit Burn is really good on Victor late game. It's really good at applying kill pressure because they can't heal up, plus it just ticks them down with that damage. And so I think it's super solid on him. But again, ideally your support or like anybody else than Victor would be buying these because he just needs the slots for so much other stuff to survive. Moving on to his mid game. The reason that I get superior cooldown first is because, well, I don't always get superior cooldown first. If his ult is on cooldown, then I will get this because it makes his ult cooldown faster. But if you still have his ult, you could skip that for escalating exposure. I like this item. I used to build Leech before this, but as we talked about in the intro, if you don't have the damage, your lifesteal doesn't do that much. Plus, Spirit Shredder bullets plus lifesteal gives you more, or it gives you roughly the same amount of Spirit lifesteal as upgrading Spirit lifesteal to Leech would give you. And it's only half as expensive. So these two items are 3,200 souls. This one item is 6,400 souls. And these two items combined give you the same amount of lifesteal, which is what you're buying this for so early, as Leech. And the way that works is because this makes you, the Spirit Shred on it makes you do more damage, which makes the damage that you steal higher. And I've tested this a lot. It might be slightly less with these two items, depending on what else you have, but it's roughly the same as just buying Leech, which is why I moved Leech over here, because we don't need it anymore. It's still a nice endgame upgrade, but we don't need it. So, escalating exposure makes you do more damage without doing more self-damage, which is really big on Victor to make the equation work. Kind of similar to level 5 Aura, but we can get it sooner. And it's better than Boundless Spirit, because Boundless Spirit will make your Aura hurt you more as well. It also makes your other skills better, but if we're just talking about Aura, escalating exposure is better. If you don't find you're getting a lot of Aura value, you could go Boundless Spirit first to get the bigger pain batteries, bigger jump starts. But typically, I like to do this. This also gives you extra Spirit Resist, which is really nice. Now, Spirit Rend is really good in a 1v1 or a 1v2 situation where you think you can land the headshots. It's not as good into a team fight. And it is -7% Spirit Shred times 4 if you can stack up the debuff, which is every 2 seconds. So not necessarily going to, but if you do, that's 28% Spirit Resist or Shred plus the 8%. So you're looking at 36% plus the 8% from this, which would be 44%. Almost half of their Spirit armor, Spirit Resist, is being shredded, which means that at this point in the build, like I said earlier, your Aura becomes HP neutral. So it is healing you for the same amount that it is damaging you, which is a big deal. And then, yeah, after that, finish up with Boundless Spirit, and you have kind of reached your power spike. And at this point, you can kind of pivot into these other items. Mystic Reverb When I first made this video, I had Mystic Reverb over here after escalating exposure because I did the math wrong, and I thought it was healing you for a lot more than it actually does. It does heal you for a lot on Aura, and I would recommend putting it on Aura. It's good on Pain Battery, but it's not going to make or break a fight on Pain Battery. But on Aura, it is 30% more lifesteal than Leech. And I don't mean that like Leech is 36% lifesteal, so this is 66. What I mean is it is 12% more, because 12 is roughly 30% of 36. So you're going to be healing 30% more health with Mystic Reverb than you would be with Leech. When you combine it with Leech, this was really hard to test, but when you combine it with Leech, you get 66% Aura lifesteal, which is really good. That's like 2/3 of an infuser, and you don't even, it's active all the time. And that's not even talking about the movement slow on it, which is also really nice for catching people. The damage that it does is like negligible. It's not going to be doing any damage because your aura, like each tick doesn't do a lot, but the ticks over time do a lot. And this kind of snapshots a tick every 6.25 seconds. So you're not buying it for the damage, you're buying it for the lifesteal. And 66% when you combine this with Leech is very significant. You can definitely feel it. And if you are doing that and building into Aura, I would recommend getting greater expansion. You get more spirit resist, and the Aura is bigger, so you can hit more people, which is nice. But if you are not going this option, like let's say they buy a lot of anti-heal, so you can't really get a lot of Aura value, or they're just going really heavy spirit resist builds, then you can go gun build, and I would recommend buying Ballistic Enchantment instead of greater expansion because it gives you significantly more gun damage, and it gives you a little bit less ability range, but still a good amount of ability range on the Aura, which is kind of what you're mainly what you're buying this for, right? Like, yeah, it makes Pain Battery bigger, makes your ult bigger, but mainly for the Aura. So I would buy this. I would buy Frenzy with this. I usually buy Frenzy every game because I just really like the item. And I think that it is very soul efficient on Victor. But yeah, buy this if you're going gun. Mercurial Magnum, I think, is super slept on with Victor, because it gives you, it doubles your gun damage, plus 98% base bullet gun damage, and that's just at this point. If you buy more purples, over 100%, and I feel like it was giving me more earlier. I don't know. Well, I guess you wouldn't really be buying that with this. Anyway, 100% extra gun damage is very significant. You will melt objectives, you will melt people. It's just really, really solid on Victor. I don't know why more people don't buy this. It also makes your Pain Battery do more damage, which is always nice because it already does so much damage. 500 damage, and then you'll be doing 87 damage on top of that. Oh, I know. It's because I'm still level 1. I didn't max out my character level-wise. So some of these numbers are not as accurate as they could be. But nonetheless, if you want to go gun, if your team doesn't have a hyper carry, buy this item. It is really, really good. Leech, I think, is still a solid item, especially if you're building Mystic Reverb also. Adding those up, like I said, 2/3 of an infuser active all the time is really good. And if you're going kind of hybrid damage, this is also a really good buy. Healing tempo, not really great stats-wise. I wouldn't buy this unless you don't have anything left to buy. Decent for gun, but really not worth it. Transcendent cooldown, I would only buy this if you're buying a lot of active items like Ethereal Shift, Infuser. I didn't mention Mystic Reverb. You can swap out with Infuser if you want. I don't really like to do that because I'd rather just have like a little bit less lifesteal active all the time. But if you're into like heavy burst, you can use Infuser. And so yeah, if you're doing like Ethereal Shift, Unstoppable, Infuser, any of these cooldown items, or Torment Pulse, or Siphon Bullets also is affected by this, then yeah, buy this. Otherwise, it's not really worth it, the upgrade from this, because it's only 5% more. Not worth the extra 3,200 souls. The only other items I really want to talk about in the build are the ones down here. Spiritual Overflow, I'm still testing. It feels pretty strong, but I don't really know where it fits into the build. It kind of just makes everything better. It makes his gun better. It makes his spirit damage better. It makes his lifesteal better. The ability duration only applies to jumpstart healing, I think, which makes your starts heal you for 20% more, which is good. But yeah, still testing this item, but not a bad buy by any means. Siphon Bullets is really solid right now. I think it is a little bit overtuned. Endgame, if you're shooting a 4000 HP enemy, each time this procs, you're going to be stealing 100 damage. And you're going to be doing 100 damage to them, and you're going to be giving 100 damage to yourself, which is a 200 damage, 200 HP differential between you every 1.2 seconds. And if you buy Transcendent Cooldown, it's only 0.9 seconds. I don't think it's super, like, it doesn't have a lot of synergy with Victor's kit, but since the item is so good right now, like, anybody can build this item and have value. Like, Mo and Krill can build this item and become Gun Mo and Krill. I wouldn't recommend it, but it wouldn't be bad on him. I think the item is so good right now that it is worth buying on Victor, especially if you don't go into these other damage options. If you want to be more tanky and you buy most of these items, then I would recommend this because it gives you more HP and more lifesteal and more damage. This is like the tank damage item. Refresher, I might just take out of the build. I'm still not sure about that because I really don't ever buy this item, because my philosophy is if you die and then you die again, a refresher probably isn't going to save you. But if you have like one more team fight to win and you win the game, then this could be a good buy. But I might replace it with something else in the build. Other things to go over. You can sell Cultist Sacrifice for a slot if you need it endgame. You can also sell Spirit Rend, Spirit Shredder Bullets for a slot endgame if you need it, because at that point you're probably not going to be stacking up this item a whole lot because you're going to be fighting 5 people at once. And I think you can get better value out of other items at that point. Plus, at that point you'll probably have Leech already, so you'll have a good amount of Spirit Lifesteal and you don't need that. And a couple other things to go over, just a couple items that I wouldn't really recommend, but I see some people buying, are Golden Goose Egg. It can be good into really passive lanes, but I think the -10 damage penalty is just too much of a negative and kind of slows down your farm speed, because you're buying this to make you do more damage, you're buying this to make you do more damage, and buying this just does the opposite, and it just doesn't feel really very good to me. But if you want to like hit that spike and you just like the dopamine of cracking eggs, by all means buy this. The most important thing is for you to have fun. Next up, I want to talk about... Nope, it's still over here. Radiant Regen is okay, but I wouldn't recommend it. I used to buy this every single game. A couple patches ago, I would buy this every single game. Everybody was telling me, "Oh, don't buy that. It's really bad. You don't want it on Victor." I was like, "No, but look at the regen that it does. Like, yeah, the healing on ability is nice, but if you're hitting 6 people endgame with your Radiant Regen, you're regenning like 60 HP per second, which is good. Don't get me wrong. The reason I don't like this item though is because it's only healing you, and it is not healing you by making you do more damage. So things like Escalating Exposure, Boundless Spirit, they heal you because you're doing more damage. This just heals you. Oops. I always think it's a green because I feel like it should be a green, but this just heals you just for healing you. It doesn't do anything else. And like we talked about at the beginning, that holy trinity of drain tanking, you want things to be doing as much of those as possible. So this is only doing one pillar, whereas something like Escalating Exposure is healing you from the lifesteal, but it's also doing damage, which is why I don't really like that item. Last thing to talk about, Colossus gives you a lot of health and makes you tanky, but I think in every situation I would rather spend the 6,400 souls on buying Spirit Resilience and Bullet Resilience over Colossus. Why? Because Colossus is only active for 7 seconds, and after that you don't have any resists. You do have the extra damage, or the extra damage, but mainly the extra health. I think endgame, it's like an extra 1,000 health or something, which is good. It's really good. but it's not good on Victor. And I kind of went over that in my last video on why that is. And I will be making another video about why I think these items in particular, but also some other items, are really good efficiency-wise and soul-wise. These are the best bang for your buck that you can buy with souls for tank items. So buy those. But more to come on that in the next video. And that is going to bring us to the end of the video. I know it was a bit of a long one today. Hopefully I can get better in the future at condensing what I'm saying into TikTok bite-sized content for TikTok brains out there. Just kidding. I'm never going to get TikTok. I think it's a terrible app. But that being said, thank you for watching. I hope that you found something useful in this video. If you try the build out, let me know how it goes. And if you disagree with me, let me know why in the comments. This was the comment of the day, and that is because Khan Academy, the GOAT, thank you, Fun Police, for the comment. That is high praise. I used to be a big fan of Khan Academy. I don't watch them much anymore, but when I was going through school, man, they were up there. But yeah, if you liked, please consider liking and subscribing, because then you get to see more content, and that's what everybody wants, right? Don't subscribe if you want to see shorts, because I will not be making those. But I might be live on Twitch, playing some Deadlock, maybe just chilling, maybe testing some items. Come by, say hi, we can have a little chat, if you want to. I don't know when I'll be doing that, but it will probably be at some point, so stay tuned. I'll let you guys know if you are curious. I think that's it for this video. Yeah, we'll catch you in the next one. Thanks for hanging out. Peace.